My early childhood was typical suburban American white picket fence, you name it. I was a joyful kid. We used to ride our bikes everywhere and all that typical stuff. My abuse started, it was the result of one of my best friend's father. I was effectively and efficiently groomed for the abuse. That abuse probably occurred from 12 to about 16, 3.5 years or so before I actually broke away from the environment. The abuse was subtle, and then it eventually progressed and got more bold and more bold and more bold. And, ultimately cultivated in, ending in rape. At that point, I actually confronted my abuser and said, enough. Surprisingly, he backed right off, got white as a ghost. I think he thought, this is it, he's in trouble. I was just happy for it to be over. Little did I know how much all of that was going to affect me. Somewhat happens in teens. We all learn to drink. We start to do that. Alcohol was a friend. I withdrew from athletics, went off to college, was kind of okay with it. I did disclose to my wife actually before we were married that I was abused, and I thought I had my big boy pants on and I'm all through this and life is good and we've got this. Not long into our marriage, probably 3 or 4 years, all that trauma and all the coping and all the bad things that come with it began to emerge. And that may manifest itself in being angry for no reason, or directing anger or finding fault with things. You feel that it's instinctual, or this is the way I am and I'm right and all of this. And it's not until you pause and go, well, where is all that coming from, that you realize, it's precipitated as a way to deal with the trauma. And I did attempt therapy at that point. The therapy just wasn't mature enough yet to deal with either a sexual assault survivor, or let alone a male sexual assault survivor, and have that trauma informed care that we're seeing emerge today as being effective. Things stabilized, and life went on. Now my wife tells me, you were a little overprotective. kind of understand why. And I think as he progressed through life at various stages, I think those would be, unbeknownst to me, triggers that would trigger me up. Then he went off to, graduated high school, went off to college, career was changing a little bit, and then everything began to reemerge in full force. And I really didn't know what was happening. And it was at that point that I figured I need help. And I actually talked to my wife and go, I can't live like this anymore. I don't know what's happening. This has got to get past me. It's been with me for 30 years. It's still here. And you start with malesurvivor.org, started reading the forums. Then you start to find the books and start to read some of the books, which were helpful. But then it became time I really need to get some therapy. Found one, entered therapy. Luckily, he was a good fit. What I've learned over the last almost 6 years in therapy now is how much, that 3.5 year period of trauma just infiltrated and interwove through every segment of my life, and really influenced so much of my behavior that I didn't even know was happening. That stuff starts coming back and it just surfaces and starts to replay and replay and replay. And those movies keep going. And I was just out in the back roads here one day in Frederick riding my bike, and it just kept coming. And I actually had to pull off the road and just vomit for a couple minutes, because it's so visceral. So I started looking for a group support when I reached a point in my healing journey that I needed to share and discuss with other individuals. Through one of the discussion forums on malesurvivor.org, threw a note out there that said, does anybody know about groups? And one of the folks on the board actually directed me back to the Virginia Survivor Services, in which I connected with a group down there. So the victim services is, having that group support ready and available when the survivor is ready, when I was ready, changed everything. When I went to that first meeting, I'm like, I don't know what to expect. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to be in a room with a bunch of guys, and uh, right, it is terrifying, but it was something I knew I needed to do. And is what happens as soon as you get in that group environment, we're all coming from the same experience. And within 10 minutes, everything just normalizes really fast. The intimacy that builds and the trust that builds in those groups takes time, but when it happens, it's amazing. After attending that group for probably close to a year, it became clear to me that additional support locally was warranted and necessary. And I have personally witnessed the lives of at least 9 men transform beyond my belief of what community can do on the healing journey. It was, in the beginning, a lot of emotion that I had never, ever experienced before. And what is this? And it's not necessarily just the bad, but also feeling good is dangerous, right? That's dangerous because that makes me vulnerable if I'm feeling good. So all of that's going on. And I think for those that are working with a survivor, or if you were a survivor, that's okay. It's gonna happen. And you're gonna cry, and you're gonna be driving down the road, and suddenly the tears are gonna come, and you don't know why. But you know what? Just let them happen. It's the best way to deal with it. Just let it come, be safe, and it'll always be better than it was. If you're thinking about that you need help, you probably need help. So that's the first step, is admitting, and I did. And then finding the help is, there's national organizations around, malesurvivor.org, 1 in 6, RAIN. So there are hotlines out there that if you're in crisis, 100% confidential, anonymous, that you can do and reach to get started. But one of the next steps to do is, to the extent that you can, get into therapy, go to victim services, get the one-on-one support that you need, because these events in our lives occurred at one of the most intimate one-on-one levels, and the healing has to start there. I'm a believer that until we start telling our story out loud and actually verbalize it, whether or not that's to a therapist, a friend, a counselor, whoever that may be, that changes everything, because we've only been having those conversations with ourselves. And the reason it's still here is because we need help. We need a teacher, we need a guide. You survive the trauma, you can survive the therapy, and you'll be 10 times better for it coming out.